I am joined by James White. Field Yates Meanakeims.
All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everybody? Mike Kadlick here. Taylor Kyle's there. Alongside friend of the show, our guest today, it is Jon Lyons from WEEI. And before we get into the full intro, we're about 7 minutes late. We were trying our hardest. Some technical difficulties behind the scenes. I have no idea how you guys see this screen right now, everybody watching at home. I don't know if it's me, Taylor, John, Taylor, me. We were coming in and out. We couldn't figure it out. Half of us were on screen, half of us weren't. So we said we're going to do it live like we always do. So if it looks stupid, if it looks silly, we apologize. But regardless, all three of us are here for a Patriots roster audit. So, John, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the time, as always. Thanks for coming back on the show. I know you've been on Pat's Daily before. I think it's the first time you've been on with myself and Taylor. So excited to do this as a trio here. And as we've started to do here on Patriots Daily, instead of the normal, how you doing, good to see you, how you been type of thing, we've been asking our guests if they can put us on to a different show they've been watching. Because, you know, as much as the grind of, of covering football and doing a bunch of different things, that, you know, you don't have a ton of time. Sometimes you got to kick back and watch a show. So have you been watching anything recently? Is there anything you can try and put us on to kind of watch in our spare time?
So I've been watching recently this older HBO show, 6 Feet Under, about this family that runs a funeral home. And it's got Peter Krause and the guy from, I forget his name, but the guy from Dexter, the main star of that,
okay.
He's in it. So it's actually not something I would typically watch, but it's really good show. So I've been watching that over the past month or so. There's 5 seasons, 63 episodes. So I'm in season 4 now, but pretty good show. And also, you know, The Wire premiered 23 years ago yesterday. So if you want to dig into that, you know, can always do that. But yeah, 6 Feet Under is the show I'm on right now. And it's been 4 seasons in. It's been pretty good.
Michael C. Hall loves him a dead body, I guess. Jeez Louise. That's crazy.
Yeah. And I will say there are quite a few of them in a show about a funeral home. There's quite a few. So yeah.
I just looked, guys, on our live stream, and somehow I'm in the middle. We couldn't figure it out. So I'm talking to Taylor on one side and John on the other. I don't know how we're going to do this, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. John, of course, is our guest from WEEI. And today, what we're going to do is audit the Patriots roster. So a couple OTA practices in the books. We have veteran mandatory minicamp coming up next week, Monday through Wednesday. And from what we've seen so far, both on the outside and on the inside with myself and Taylor down at Foxborough, a lot of moving parts. Some guys not there, obviously, because the first part of the offseason was voluntary. Second part here turns into mandatory next week, so we may get a little bit better of a feel of kind of who's lined up where in each position group. So what we wanted to do is kind of take a big picture look, go through each position group, and kind of parse it out. Some of them, obviously, like quarterback, which we'll touch on first, pretty obvious. I think we know where Drake Maye and the rest of the bunch stand, but could get interesting as far as wide receivers, cornerbacks, even the offensive line and where they're at. So we're going to kind of go through each here and take a big picture look. So we'll start with quarterbacks. And as we know, it's Drake Maye, it's Josh Dobbs, and it is rookie Ben Woolridge. John, at least big picture from the outside looking in, I'm kind of curious just what your thoughts have been on Drake Maye as a whole, not just from what you've seen and heard throughout the course of this offseason, but even coming in general last year. Like myself and Taylor are high on the Drake Maye train. We've been kind of riding that train for a while. I'm curious to know what you've thought of him so far, what you thought of his rookie season, and kind of how Josh McDaniels can hopefully potentially turn him into a top-tier quarterback here in this.
Yeah, I think Drake Maye, there's a lot to like there. And you go back to last year, you can make the case he had the worst situation of any rookie quarterback in the NFL, and arguably the worst situation of any quarterback in general in the NFL, given that it was a lame duck head coach who seemed in over his head. Sorry, Gerard Mayo. A lame duck OC, arguably the worst skill group in the NFL, arguably the worst offensive line in the NFL. All these things I'm listing out, you might sit here and say, well, geez, how did the guy even survive? But I thought there was a lot to like over the course of the year. I thought you saw mostly good decision-making and decisiveness. Now, that being said, the turnovers are something that he's going to have to get better at. And it's the 10 interceptions, it's the fumbling problems, and it's also, and Mike, you know this, it's never a good time to turn the ball over as a quarterback, but he turned the ball over at especially bad times. You think overtime against Tennessee to end the game against the Rams, right? And I know Houston beat them by 20 and it was his first start, but some key turnovers and key moments in that game. If you go, how about the Buffalo game, right? That touchdown pass to Kayshon Boutte down the right sideline, in my opinion, the best pass a Patriots quarterback has made since Tom Brady left. However, a couple quarters later, you have a backwards pass fiasco, leads to a Bills score. You end up losing the game, right? So the timeliness of the turnovers too. So that's the biggest thing. I talked to Drake Maye in December about this. I think the checkdowns are something he's got to get a little bit better at too. And this is something he kind of struggled with in training camp last year. I thought he was inconsistent about it during the season. He mentioned this to me after the season last year. That was something he wanted to improve on. And it's tough, right? Because Alex Van Pelt's offense was such a 5-out offense and that he wanted 5 guys out running patterns as much as possible, including the running backs. With McDaniels, I think you'll see more, I don't want to say more screens, but better executed screens, maybe some more in totality. You're going to see better pass protection from the running backs. And I think you'll see some more check down opportunities. And I would like to see Drake Maye take those more, because when you look at it as a whole, I mean, 2,200 yards, 15 touchdowns is good. And he was sacked 34 times behind a porous offensive line. So can he just limit the turnovers a little bit? And if he can do that, I think we might be sitting here talking about him as the second best quarterback in the AFC East by the end of the year. And then by next year, we might be talking about him as one of those top 7, 8, 9 best quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think there's a clear path there for improvement. And I think there's a lot to like as well.
I think we're seeing some early glimpses of that improvement. Like first open OTA that we went to with Drake Maye, the headline was 4 interceptions. And, I came on here and said, I didn't necessarily think that was really representative of the entire practice. There was one play where he and Demario Douglas weren't on the same page. It seemed like Drake thought that he was going to break outside. Demario Douglas sits because they're still trying to figure out what to do post-snap. And even I think post-snap reaction was something that maybe Drake could get a little better at. And you'd understand that for a young quarterback. But no turnovers in the last 2 practices we've been to. And as much as you can get on him for saying, oh, he's not throwing the ball downfield enough, which he did a much better job, I think, of yesterday. But maybe that's the coaches. They always say there's different things they're working on each day. Maybe they're saying, we don't need you to try to force a throw down the seam. We'd like to just see when you're not in pads, what's your mental process? If the answers aren't there, yeah, in a 2-minute drill to win the game, you're going to be forcing some throws because you're trying to move the ball in a crucial moment. But in these passing camps, if it's first down, you're trying to see the guy get down to his check down if something's not available, not necessarily try to be Superman. So I absolutely agree. I try to be very careful when we say, oh, Drake's not throwing downfield. Like, what's going on? You have no idea what coaches are telling him to do. So again, we're seeing it in the very, very early stages. None of this really matters until the pads come on. But at least at this stage, we're able to say, in this McDaniels offense, I wouldn't say from what I've seen that he looks overwhelmed. It looks kind of like more late stage Alex Van Pelt offense where it's like, okay, yeah, no, he's getting through pretty well. Doesn't feel like he's stuck on reads. It's a pretty efficient process.
Yeah, and I would think too, like about the pushing the ball downfield. And sorry to cut you off, Mike. Like,
no, you're good.
Look at the structure of their offense. Like the McDaniels offense is primarily an intermediate to short passing game offense. Now they had Randy Moss, right? They'll push the ball down the field, and Chris Hogan, they'll push it down the field, but it's primarily an intermediate to short offense. And this is a team that's had bad pass protection for 2 years. They have receivers that I don't know. Do they scare anybody deep that much? I mean, Javon Baker has the skills to it, but he's inconsistent getting off press. I know we're talking about the wide receivers later and down the field. So if you're Drake, throwing the ball shorter and intermediate is probably the better thing to do, especially early on in the OTAs. Now, if we're sitting here on August 15th and they're not pushing the ball down the field, I'll wave a red flag. But I think early on in an OTA, I'm not as worried about that.
And one more thing, I believe that Josh told us yesterday that was the day that they began working on third downs, or at least like that was the focus. And we saw, right? There were like 4 straight times where Drake Maye did try to push the ball. Whereas if they're just getting into third downs, we can assume that everything we saw was them on first and second, where, yeah, those check downs are probably what you'd want to be telling your young quarterback to do. So just another layer of context. If anything, it seems like maybe Drake is following the coaching, but of course, I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth. We have no idea what their practice agendas look like.
I think the best thing we heard from Josh yesterday and Ashton Grant as well was, it's either a good play in OTAs or a learning play from OTAs, where they're not necessarily going to get on and harp on these guys, but rather, look, it's the end of May, beginning of June here. Like, we're all just trying to put together a relatively new offense to most people, besides essentially Ramondre Stevenson. We'll get into him in a second. He had a pretty funny comment about the McDaniels offense, but I think it's a good pairing. I think it's a good match. Overall, definitely excited for what Drake Maye can bring to the table here. Before we do move on to running backs, John, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the backup quarterback switch, if you will, where they bring in Josh Dobbs and then they also trade away Joe Milton. Where were you in this Joe Milton trade saga, if you will? Did you think they should have held on to him? Did you like the trade? And how do you feel about Josh Dobbs being the guy behind Drake Maye here?
So Dobbs to me is a solid journeyman veteran to be behind me. He threw for what? It was 2,000 yards a couple of years ago in 2023. That's kind of all he's done that's really popped. So, he's an okay veteran. He'll show him how to prepare as much as he needs. On the Milton thing, it was kind of an odd situation to me because I thought last year there were really only 3 players that got better as the season went on, which was an indictment of their player development. But it was Drake Maye, Marte Mapu, and Joe Milton. I thought those were the only 3 guys that appreciably from when I was there in August at training camp until the end of the year, got noticeably better. So I thought they would keep Milton around for one more year, improve him a little bit more, up the trade value. And from Milton's perspective, if you want to be a starter, I mean, he's getting traded to Dallas with a rookie head coach and an established starting quarterback and Dak Prescott, really the place that you're going to be able to develop into a starter. I don't think so. So, maybe they felt that it was not going to be a healthy competition because there's a difference between a healthy competition and unhealthy competition. Maybe they thought Milton thought he was better than he was and should have overtaken Maye. I don't know. I can't speak for them, but I did find it a little bit odd that they didn't give it at least one more year to just see how it could develop. And I mean, when we talk about big physical quarterbacks, I mean, Josh McDaniels worked with Cam Newton. I know it's not exactly the same guy, but it's like they've worked together before. I mean, he worked with Matt Castle, a guy who would like to move around a lot too. So I was a little surprised they didn't want to keep him around for one more year.
No, I
got nothing on the backup stuff. I feel like we talked about it ad nauseum on here.
This is where
he would have been the best 6th-round pick they ever had.
Right. I can't add more fuel. I love your perspective, and I got nothing else to add.
I hear you. And again, I just thought, I don't think it's that big a story. I thought it was a little weird. I would have hung on to him for another year, but okay, you got Josh Dobbs. All right.
That was I'm trying to play the how long should I pause? Because the last time I didn't pause enough, I started talking and John had another thought. And then this time I paused just in case Taylor had a thought.
No, that's why I was like, oh, right. No, I was thinking oh yeah, no, that's good. But I have nothing. I should have given you
just play pause roulette, right? That's why you're in the middle of the screen.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I can't believe I'm in the middle of the screen. I don't see myself in the middle of the screen. So that's all throwing me off too. But regardless, that's the quarterback position. We'll move on to running backs here. Patriots make a big move in the offseason, drafting TreVeyon Henderson at the top of the 2nd round. They add him to a running back room of Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson, Terrell Jennings. They also bring in Len Larison, undrafted free agent out of UC Davis, who has kind of been in the UDFA conversation here with a guy that we'll talk about in the next position room at wide receiver. Sticking on running backs first, though, John. Stevenson comes back yesterday, says that, which I thought was actually pretty cool, that running backs coach Tony Dews visited him in Vegas this offseason when his father passed away, which it just goes to show the culture they're trying to build here. So I thought that was a pretty cool nugget. But Stevenson, been back and forth this offseason, going through some personal stuff, comes back yesterday, and will add, I think, a solid element to this room on top of what they obviously already, what they already have. Then you add the veteran and Stevenson in as well. So Antonio Gibson here. I know that, like I said, there's been some excitement on Larison. Your thoughts on TreVeyon Henderson being the addition and the pick at the top of the 2nd round, and also just the room in general and where they're at going into 2025.
Yeah, for the room in general, I mean, I would start with Stevenson and say the same thing I said about Drake Maye. Can he limit the turnovers, right? 7 fumbles last year, most by a running back. And again, it's never good to turn the ball over, but I go back to that Buffalo game. He has a huge fumble in the 3rd quarter of that game, and then he's part, 1/3 of, if you will, 1/4 of the backwards pass fiasco there too. So it's 2 huge turnover swings in that game that he's part of. So I think that's something that he needs to figure out and he needs to get better at. And I know that's an easy thing to say, but he just has to, or else TreVeyon Henderson's going to be the starter by the end of the year. And I think with Stevenson, I think he's plateaued a little bit as far as his career goes, but I think that plateau is a pretty good running back, right? He's physical. He moves pretty well. I think he has good vision in addition to that. Now, he had 69 catches in 2022. I think that was a product of Matt Patricia just force feeding him throughout the year. I don't want him to have 69 catches, but I think he's shown he can contribute in the passing game. So I think that's your lead back, and that's a really good player if he can limit the fumbling this year. And as far as Henderson goes, man, if there's one word to describe him, and you guys have probably used it before, it's explosiveness. I mean, go back to that 75-yard touchdown catch and run against Texas. Go back to all the big plays that he made for Ohio State this year. And yes, I know people are probably sick of hearing about it. He is a really good pass blocker. And yes, that's really important. That's going to get you on the field, not just on third down, but on first and second down as well. What I do want to see from him at the NFL level, how good is he running between the tackles? Because I think we talk a lot about his speed. We talk a lot about his explosiveness, but how good is he at running between the tackles? Because if he can do that, and even compared to James White, we look at James White as a pass catching back, and we look at him in open space, but when he needed to, he could gain 3 or 4 yards between the tackles here and there. And if Henderson can do that, he can play a huge role in this offense. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see some 21 personnel with him, Stevenson, and Hunter Henry on the field at times, or even 20 personnel, depending on how their receiver room shakes out. So I think Henderson's going to be the guy that by the end of the season, he's going to be that rookie the Patriots fans are like, ooh, I like that guy. That guy's my favorite rookie, because he's going to make 2 or 3 big plays in October and November, 40-yard run or 35-yard catch and run that's going to change a couple games. And I think people are going to like him a lot. So I think there's a really lot to like about Henderson. And one last note on him, and it's the same thing I'll say later on if we talk about Joshua Farmer and Kyle Williams. It's a guy they targeted. They could have traded down. They could have gotten picks. And they said, no, this is the guy we want. Much like Kyle Williams, they traded down, passed on a chance to take Trey Harris and some other guys, drafted him. Joshua Farmer, they trade up for him. This draft had multiple guys they targeted for their system, whether it was with Josh, with Drake, they targeted. So that's something I kind of have my eye on too. But yeah, I think Henderson's going to be the guy that by the end of the season, a lot of Patriots fans are going to be a big fan of him.
Absolutely. I think with Ramondre, the only thing that he could potentially add to his game is, I think, more of a downfield receiving element. And I think we saw flashes of that with Josh. Like, he had that seam against the Cowboys, I remember his rookie year. Even yesterday, he catches a wheel that Drake Maye throws him on the run. So that's maybe the only thing where I think it's, he kind of, Ramondre is what he is. You know what you're going to get. And that's fine, because if you give him decent blocking, I think you're going to be very happy with the running back that you have. But with TreVeyon Henderson, I don't have much to add, but based on the way they're using him, it seems like he's going to have, there's definitely some James White, but I think it's going to be like some Rex Burkhead too, where he's not just a third down back. Like, they really want to maximize his explosiveness, his versatility. I will say the hands aren't quite as natural in person as I thought they'd be. Like yesterday, there was one, I know that we uploaded it, but like, he kind of bobbles a wheel route, has to catch it on his back, but doesn't actually catch it in bounds. There's been a couple like a couple of catches he's had on air that just didn't look super clean, but he's still very early in his career. Maybe it's jitters. I don't know. He's put it on his college tape. I'm not worried, but I agree, John. He's going to have a very fun role in this offense.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a guy that, again, explosive play after explosive play, you're going to see those add up a little bit.
Before we go back to receiver, John, I know you mentioned Ramondre sort of being not the bell cow, but the lead back who kind of paces them and carries. Is there a chance by the end of the season, I'll ask you guys both this, that it turns into, well, TreVeyon Henderson's just a little bit younger, a little bit faster, and a little bit better of a running back than Ramondre, and they kind of eventually turn the keys over to the rookie and kind of start phasing Ramondre out of the offense? Or do you think this is going to be a true 2-horse race in the backfield?
Yeah, I think it's possible, and I think Ramondre's been at his best when he's been part of a platoon. You go back to his rookie year with Damian Harris, he had, 600 yards rushing in 12 games Ramondre did. Like, I think he's been at his best when he's been part of some sort of platoon. We haven't even mentioned Antonio Gibson, who could have a sizable role, at least at some points in this offense. I'm not going to sit here and be shocked if we get to week 15 and Henderson's playing just as many, if not a little bit more snaps than Stevenson, but I don't think he's going to put Stevenson on the bench by any means. Like, I think at most you'll see him play a little bit more snaps, but Stevenson still, I'd be shocked if he doesn't have a big role in this offense, and also add in his previous experience with McDaniels too.
Taylor, you agree? No chance on Henderson making a push?
I think that I really think it comes down to Ramondre Stevenson's ball security, to be honest. I think that's the bottom line because Vrabel said it. He's going to have a big role in this offense, and I think they do see him as the bell cow. Plus, with Henderson's injury history as well, I think as much as they do want to use him, I think they'll be somewhat diligent in making sure that he's not like the guy, like you said, John. He's not the between the tackles grinder. If you give him a lead blocker, I think he could be really effective there. But I do think that they want Ramondre to be the battering ram and then have Travion as the change of pace / third down back with probably Antonio Gibson just filling in whatever role you need for him. Like whatever that week is planned for. If you're using the running backs more in a passing capacity, maybe Antonio Gibson has a bigger role. If you're really just trying to run it down their throat, maybe that's kind of more of a Ramondre and Travion game. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Antonio Gibson specifically is used in that lineup. Maybe even if Lan Larison shows up. He hasn't really gotten a ton of time with like Drake Maye, so I don't want to really hype him up because we haven't seen enough to do that. But Antonio Gibson's role will be interesting, but Travion I think definitely is going to be featured, but in more of a rotational kind of role than what we'll see from Ramondre.
We'll move on to the wide receivers here, Taylor, because you mentioned hyping up a UDFA. So we do want to talk about Efton Chisholm here, but I actually do want to start, John, with your thoughts on, well, the room in general, but specifically Stefon Diggs, because, and we don't have to parse through the drama that was the boat trip and the pig substance and all that, but more so, okay, he shows up, and from what we saw and from the videos that have been posted over the last 24 hours, looks pretty damn good on that torn ACL that he suffered last October. So his role in the offense, I'm curious what your thoughts are, but also just, I guess, where he slots in the room in general and what you make of them actually signing Diggs this offseason and how he can help Drake Maye.
So look, he's 31. He's coming off a torn ACL. Maybe he likes boat parties a little too much. Not going to excuse that. But he's the first guy probably since Rob Gronkowski in 2018, but maybe you could throw in Edelman in 2020 before he got hurt, that an opposing defense has actually had to game plan around in the passing game when you play the Patriots. And again, Kendrick Bourne, no disrespect, he had 800 yards receiving in 2021. He was good. I think a lot of that was, he was good, but he got schemed open at times. They caught some teams by surprise that year with a rookie Mac Jones as well. I think this is the first time, again, since those years, 5, 6, I mean, we're talking 5, 6, 7 years ago, that they really had a guy that, the Raiders in week 1 are going to have to sit there if he's playing and say, we got to stop that guy. Or later in the year when they play the Falcons in early November, the Falcons are going to sit down in their coaches meeting and say, we got to stop that guy. It's been a long time since they had that. Obviously, the injury recovery is a big deal. The buy-in is a big deal. I'm not minimizing those things. But when you ask what he brings to the field, I mean, last year, at the time he got hurt, he had 1.84 yards per route run. That would have been the best of any Patriots wide receiver for the season. He had 31 catches for first downs, would have been second on the Pats for the whole season. I mean, he was on pace to essentially have another 1,000-yard season as well down there. And I think the thing about Diggs too, and I know people are worried about, he wanted out of Minnesota. At the end in Buffalo, it wasn't good. When you look at his career, the first 2 years in a new place have pretty much gone well. I mean, he missed his first few games in Minnesota, I think with an injury, he was inactive. And after that, those first 2 years went smooth. His first couple of years in Buffalo went really smooth. I mean, they're in the AFC Championship game in 2020, right? And then his first year in Houston, up until the time he got hurt, from all indications, things were going really well. And he still, look, he might have been second fiddle to Nico Collins for part of that. And I know Collins was banged up as well. He still had 62 targets in 8 games. Like, he was still really productive and out there. So again, this is a guy to me that you do look, the injury recovery is a big deal. The boat thing is more, it's not okay. If it's the only incident and he moves on fine, then fine. If there's other incidents, then it's a big problem.
Sure.
But if he's out there on the field for them, if he can get to that point, it's a difference maker that they have not had in quite some time.
Yeah, purely from an on-field perspective, I don't want to create the perception that Stefon Diggs is going to be like the guy. I think he's going to bring a level of stability they haven't had in a long time. And I think that's huge. Now, that's what I think the on-field contribution will be. He's going to be a chain mover. I think he's someone where Drake can at least be comfortable knowing he's going to be where he's got to be when he needs to be there. Like, just a true professional who's going to bring consistency. Off the field is where I think his value is really going to be shown the most. Now, not if he's getting caught on boats with pink substances. That doesn't help. But even on the field, like yesterday, we could see what he was doing when he's like working off on the side with Jalen Polk, showing him how to get off press at the top of routes where, Polk runs it one way and Diggs is like, no, you get on him. And, it's kind of the way that you teach receivers where it's like, if he pulls, you can push. it's okay. Because if he's making contact, that's how you create your separation. So being able to teach those little techniques, being a guy like Diggs, who isn't the greatest athlete or the biggest guy, but still was able to produce and be an elite receiver because he was so dedicated to the craft and so technically sound, I think that's where he's really going to have an impact. So I think it was encouraging what he was doing on the field yesterday. Like, he didn't look anything close to what we saw from Kendrick Bourne this time last year, or even like going all the way into the summer. Like, we didn't really see Kendrick Bourne participating. And in the rehab videos, you could tell he was recovering. Diggs, for a 30-year-old, I wouldn't really know. I was saying yesterday, I wouldn't really know that he was injured. So I really think the stability and being able to help guide this very young offense are the biggest things that he's going to bring. But of course, if this continues, or if something crazy pops up in the middle of the season, not necessarily crazy, but like something that makes him a distraction, then, you know, you're singing a little bit of a different tune, because you got to lock in at that point. But really, from a dedication standpoint and like work ethic, I have no doubt that Diggs is doing what he needs to do. Just like, don't be having your fun while people's cameras are out. Just don't do that. And you're
Literally.
have your fun. Just do it in private.
Put the damn camera away. John, I want to get your thoughts as well on the back end of the room guy. Not necessarily back end, but you know, you have your Diggs, your Matt Collins, your Demario Douglas, who are essentially locks. But then there's Jalen Polk, there's Javon Baker, Kyle Williams. Not that he's fighting for a roster spot, but more so he's going to be the one getting in the way of Baker and Polk fighting for a roster spot. Kendrick Bourne as well. I know you don't have a full, and neither do we have a full 53-man roster projection out just yet, but what do you need to see? What do you want to see from those guys? And who do you think could potentially push some other guys off the roster?
Yeah, I'll start with Kyle Williams. And I think this is a guy that's an intriguing prospect to me. And I mentioned earlier, right? A guy they targeted 5'11", 186, and he's got great speed. And I think, you know, of a young receiver, his releases off the line are tremendous. And I think that's going to serve him well at the NFL level. And I think he's he's walking a fine line right now where I'd like to see him add a little bit of muscle, but I don't want him to add too much muscle where it slows him down, right? I want him to add a little bit of muscle where he can block well at the NFL level and look, as good as his releases are, if an NFL DB gets his hands up, he's going to have to be able to swat him away and rip through, right? So add a little bit of muscle, but not too much. But yeah, I mean, 70 catches last year, almost 1,200 yards. This dude is a game breaker. I like that he's got experience coming in motion and releasing off the line in motion. I bet you Josh is going to do stuff like that. I could see him too, not all the time, but they're going to put him in the slot and have him run downfield. And don't be surprised then if 2 or 3 snaps after that, he's over at Z and they ask him to do something similar or a deeper dig route or something like that. Like, I can see them moving him around a little bit. And I think that would be beneficial for him. And I think it'd be beneficial for the offense. So he's the guy, like when I look at this receiver group, I agree with you. It's Diggs, right? It's Matt Collins. It's Demario Douglas. I think he has real potential to be that 4th guy. I mean, again, needs some development there. And I also look at Kendrick Bourne. Again, I mentioned the 800 yards in 2021. He was on pace for a career high in 2023 before he got hurt, which with Bill O'Brien was a similar offense to this. You know, obviously not exactly the same. So can he get back to that style of offense and, you know, maybe push to still have a significant, you know, contribution on the field? Because he's still not that old, right? Like, he's been with the Patriots since 2021, but they signed him when he was 25, right? So he's not like that old. He still has time to, I think, contribute there. And I think he's a great locker room guy as well, because we've talked a lot about that receiver room over the past couple of years, lacking in some leadership, lacking in some attention to detail. We saw it with penalties, with missed blocks, with bad routes. He was a guy to me that always stood out where I know Matt Patricia didn't like him a few years ago, but generally he was doing the right thing and he had the right attitude. So he's a guy I'd like to see make it. And you asked about Polk and Baker. My philosophy on them, honestly, if you can get one good player out of the two of them, I'm happy. And I think it's going to be Polk over Baker, because I think there's just more to work with there with Polk. I mean, Baker's the guy, and you guys are down there at training camp too. You see it, and you saw it last August. He makes 2 or 3 40-yard, receptions, these wow plays, and it's like, oh wow, hey, watch that. And then you don't see the consistency, right? You see the inconsistent blocking, or you see the drops, or you see, this is a guy that had drop problems his last year at UCF, and you see, the intermediate routes not there a lot. Whereas Polk, I just think there's more to work with there. I think there's a more well-rounded game. So I think it's going to be Polk over Baker. I again, can you give me one good player out of those two guys? And I think you'd be happy. And the room gets, look, made it this far. We haven't even mentioned Kayshon Boutte. That room gets kind of crowded near the bottom.
Yeah, Kyle Williams, I think, is like the biggest difference maker for this offense. Kind of like what I said about Javon Baker and to a degree Jalen Polk last year. Because if you just have one young receiver who can add that dynamic element, that field stretching ability, it opens up everything else. And it lets you use Drake Maye to the best of his ability. Because can he be the dink and dunk guy who hits all the sail routes and all the deep digs? Like, yes, he can. But also, he can hit a go route in stride and actually turn those open targets into touchdowns. And Kyle Williams gives him a guy who makes his life easier, one, being able to create that separation and create that real vertical speed on instant scores, but also can do it underneath, where he's a guy who can shake you. He can just flat out outrun the defense. I thought he was just as impressive as a yak guy as he was downfield, if not more impressive. I think he averaged something crazy, I know, after the catch. Like, he's breaking tackles, which when you look at him, you wouldn't expect it, right? Because he's a pretty frail dude. He's not very big. And he's another guy where it's exciting knowing that Stefon Diggs is going to be someone who mentors him, because they seem like very similarly minded guys. Like Kyle Williams, I saw there's a picture of him walking off and talking to Julian Edelman. It just seems like he's got the kind of mindset where he's going to be successful, and it's not going to be anything within his power that keeps him from being a productive player. And then the young guys, I agree. I think Polk is the guy with the inside track to actually making the roster and having a role on this team. He's putting the work in for everything we've seen. Although he's not participating, like, he's still running hard. And there are some inconsistencies for sure, but it doesn't look like Javon, where, like you mentioned, it's such crazy polar opposites at times where he does make your jaw drop. And then a couple plays later, it's a rep that's so bad, he does not look like an NFL player. So as much as I was someone who was hyping him up like this time last year, he just hasn't shown enough for me to think that he's going to have a role on this team where, like, Kayshon Boutte is someone that everybody loves, and he'd technically be a surprise cut because right now he's the starting X receiver. But frankly, he's not an X. He's really built like more of a Z, but he's not dynamic enough to justify being a Z, because you'd rather have a guy like Polk or like Kyle Williams there. So it just feels like if you put him on another team, he wouldn't even be a starter ideally. So I just don't see, considering all the investments they've made since Boutte was taken, and also the fact they've got now veterans who have been in the McDaniel system and you know what they're getting out of them. I just don't really see how he sticks on the roster unless Kyle Williams doesn't emerge, or it just comes down to numbers and it's like, all right, well, we need an outside receiver, and it just comes down to Boutte because maybe Kyle Williams isn't ready. Which I hope
we will round out the offense in a second here with the tight ends, the offensive line. We will touch on the defensive rooms as well. But first, we got to pay the bills here. First and foremost, make sure you keep it here on Patriots Press Pass for all of your Patriots coverage. It is the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel. Rate, review, and subscribe. It is not just Patriots Daily here, but we got Patriots Beat. We got the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast, Pat's Interference, and a whole lot more. So please rate, review, and subscribe to the channel if you are here. And if you're listening, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, like it, and also leave a review. That helps us out a ton. And then we also have our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to turn your prize. Hold on. I clicked the wrong thing. I have to read Prize Picks today. So here we go. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action and turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. And all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. There's only one series left in the basketball playoffs, and the championship is officially on the line. And that means time is running out for you to put your final takes to the test on Prize Picks. Again, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Think Shea will get more than 30 points? You think Tyrese Halliburton will have more than 25 points? Cook up those hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. It's Taco Tuesday as well here on Prize Picks. If you head over there every Tuesday, like it is today, they discount several projections on the board from 15 to 25%. So head over there today, download the app, use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Well, we got that in after a couple mishaps here, but that is Prize Picks. Shout out to them as always. Great sponsor of the show. And if you are into it, get in on the action. Use that code CLNS for $50 instantly. All right, fellas, let's talk tight ends. Not a deep room, not one that we have to get too far into because, frankly, it's Hunter Henry, it's Austin Hooper, and then it's UDFAs kind of fighting for potentially that third spot, and then maybe Jaheim Bell. But John, your thoughts on the room in general, Hunter Henry, and kind of where this can go this season. What do you make of, and we can loop in the fullback Brock Lampy as well, who was a UDFA this year, because Josh McDaniels is back and potentially the fullback is back as well.
Yeah, and I know we're all mock draft sickos, so in 2026, don't be shocked if tight end is their first round pick or early second round as well, because they do need to add some high end upside and youth, I think, to this room. Because Hunter Henry, look, 674 yards last year. He's a captain. He's a really, really good player. He does turn 31 in December. He's taken a lot of punishment here in New England, but that's a guy at the top of your room that, again, as I mentioned, Diggs is that guy that maybe defenses have to game plan for. And I think that'll help Hunter Henry a lot. That'll open some things up for him because, the last couple of years, if you're playing the Patriots, it's like, okay, well, just make sure Stevenson doesn't have too many holes to run in and cover Hunter Henry, and boom, you got him. Now it's a little bit more difficult. And I think Austin Hooper, it's a nice complimentary piece if he sticks around. That's about it. And then Jaheim Bell, to me, so you mentioned like UDFAs and the fighting for roster spots. There's a real opportunity here for one or two of those guys to make a name for themselves, because I think we look at Henry as an established guy for this year and probably next year as well. But as I said, beyond that, there isn't a lot of high upside youth in there, at least as of yet. So do one of those guys emerge, like Jaheim Bell, the one catch last year. I wonder are they going to move him around? Like we saw with Josh McDaniels in 2021 with Jonnu Smith, put him in the backfield at times, move him all over the place. Like Jaheim Bell did have 74 carries in 2022 with South Carolina. Like that's something that maybe they want to do. The one UDFA I kind of look at with interest is G. Scott Jr. out of Ohio State, because he was recruited there as a wide receiver. He gained over 30 pounds while at Ohio State. He's still kind of learning how to play tight end. I think he could be a really interesting hybrid move, however you want to call it in your offense, that F tight end moving around, depending on your terminology. He could be a really interesting guy to move around in that offense if he can develop. But that's the thing. Beyond Hunter Henry, I'm looking at this group with a lot of ifs. And this is one that I think just in training camp, when they put the pads on, we're just going to have to see it and see how it shakes out. It feels like a pretty thin group right now, and something that might be a next off season that they invest kind of heavily in.
I think the veteran tight ends, and I understand why we don't really talk about them because we know what they are. But I feel like when we talk about the receivers, especially nationally, when it's, who does Drake Maye have to throw to? Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry were like one of the most dynamic in terms of production tight end duos in the league. And it's not because they're the fastest or anything, but Drake is the kind of guy where he will put the ball in a place where you can go and get it, even if you're not open. We saw it a few times with Austin Hooper where he just puts it on the top shelf and he's like, hey, big guy, go up and get it. And that's a huge part of this pass game where there's not a whole lot of vertical separation. You're going to have to just let guys kind of make plays. And the receivers haven't proven that they can do that on a consistent basis. Like, Demario Douglas can get open, but he's a smaller target. And Drake Maye, his accuracy is kind of hit or miss. We saw it in his first game where Demario Douglas gets wide open on crossing routes, and he only hits him once in stride, even though all three probably would have been touchdowns. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's just Drake Maye. I think you want him with those big bodies. So I do think that, we should acknowledge that the tight ends probably should have pretty productive seasons, but the depth is an issue. And honestly, I was excited about Dupree. I'm hoping maybe Jaheim Bell, like you always see Mike Vrabel working with him and talking to him. And I liked his college tape as well. I want to see him succeed. And Jack Westover, Thomas Brown mentioned him, says he likes the tight ends to know where to line up at Y, the F, the fullback. But frankly, respectfully, it looks like a mid-off at practice. Like no one's really asserting themselves, consistently making plays. Jaheim Bell had a few drops yesterday where it's kind of the Javon Baker thing where it's like, I see the flashes, but there's also moments where I'm just like, big yikes. And for guys who have so few opportunities, it's just really disappointing. So I'm hoping that like Dupree has more money for an undrafted free agent than any player since like 2012 for the Patriots. Hopefully he emerges. I also think that when the pads come on for the tight ends, that's when you're going to show up, right? It's great if you can catch passes, but at the end of the day, a lot of these guys are going to get jobs from blocking. So we'll see then, but I need one of these guys to emerge because it really is two older veterans who, are going to get banged up, and then not a lot of guys that inspire confidence at this point behind them.
All right, I want to get into my favorite topic of the offseason, the offensive line. because we've done short arms, Will Campbell. We did it way too many times. I don't even talk about it seriously anymore. I just bring it up as a joke. But John, I want to get your thoughts on. I know you're a draft Nick. You're a draft guy. You're in the mock draft game with us. So first and foremost, your thoughts on them actually bringing in Will Campbell at the 4th overall pick. What you made of it? Would you have done that? But then also just him being what looks like their starting left tackle right off the bat. They're not trying him on the inside just yet. They are sticking him on the outside and kind of pushing through there. So thoughts on Campbell, but then the rest of the room as well, because there's been a rotation on the inside, on the interior. They bring in Garrett Bradbury. They get rid of David Andrews, as we know. So have they actually improved along the offensive line since last year?
To answer your question, yes, they have. And you can look at Morgan Moses right away. I think that's an improvement at right tackle. And for Will Campbell, look, my first instinct with the draft and going into it was trade down, pick somebody between the 8 to 10 range. And, Tyler Warren was my personal favorite. And then trade back up into the late first round and pick a guy like a Josh Simmons to play left tackle for you there going forward. So that was kind of my instinct and my plan. But that being said, I do think Will Campbell is going to be a good left tackle in the NFL. And I would say, you guys down there at OTAs, if you get a chance to run on the field with a tape measure and get that actual arm length, I think you'll have a story for years, right? But it comes down to, okay, are they 32 and 5/8? Are they 33? Rashawn Slater's at 33. I'm not dismissing the concern, okay? I'm not. But I think when you watch Will Campbell play, even if you're concerned about the arm length, watch his feet and his hands. Like, they're so good. Like, his feet move so well. He moves, I think, for a guy that's 6'6", he moves with ease across formations and countering guys as well. And when I mention his hands, you notice when he gets engaged with a defender, they don't get away. And I think that's a big deal. Now, is there going to be times where maybe he gets beat off the edge on a speed rush occasionally during the season? Definitely possible. Could there be a time where he pulls a Vidarian low and sets up too far outside and gets beat inside for a sack? It's possible. And I think we'll criticize him at that time. But I think when you look at the package in totality, this guy's going to be a good left tackle. I believe that. And the more and more I've watched him, the more and more I've been sold on that. And two other pieces on Will Campbell, which I think are important. One speaks to his intelligence, and that's when I was watching him on film. There were some times where it looked like, and I know you don't have audio on these films, but he was making adjustments from the left tackle position. And that's something generally the quarterback does or the center does, which are typically your smartest guys on that protection offensive line, right? The center of the QB. So for him as a left tackle to be doing that, and this is a guy that has started from day one, faced good edge rushers from day one, I think speaks to his football IQ. And the other thing, and this is just kind of a common sense thing, not a deep analysis, look at all the times LSU threw the ball deep, especially 2 years ago with Jaden Daniels. They had no problem singling up Will Campbell while it took a play 4 or 5 seconds to develop for Jaden Daniels to throw the ball downfield. And I think that speaks to the LSU coach's confidence in him to block on his own, on an island, good edge rushers, as I mentioned. So, look, I think this guy is going to be a good left tackle. And honestly, guys, the worst case scenario, sky is falling. He's a really good guard. Like, that's still valuable. Now, is it worth 4th overall? No, but it's still valuable, right? Like, I mean, Logan Mankins was still valuable, right? He got picked in the 1st round. He was still really valuable for a long time. Stephen Neal was really valuable for a long time. So, and Shaq Mason was valuable, right? So having a good guard is valuable. But I really believe, and I'm not trying to be a homer, I just look at his feet and I look at his hands. I look at what seems to me the football IQ, and I think he's going to be a good left tackle. And you put that with Morgan Moses, who maybe he's an average player, but I mean, average is a lot better than what they've had at tackle the last couple of years. I think your tackle position right away, I think, is a lot better.
And Will Campbell, to your point, like, you can tell the difference between sometimes the tackle saying, oh, this guy's going to blitz, giving his quarterback a heads up. There were times with Nussmeier, you could tell he's like, no, I'm telling you, this is what we need to do. And then you see the quarterback adjust. Those moments were very, very impressive. And like you said, like you can see in college, people throw around the stats of like, oh, he allowed like 1 sack in 2 years. It's like, yeah, but if you're being honest and you look at him against the guys who get drafted in the 1st and 2nd round, he's given up some pretty quick losses. Like, it's not perfect, but at the same time, you also, if you look at the entire matchup, you're seeing like he's locking guys up. He's very patient with his hands, where if you got short arms, a lot of the time you can't be the first one to throw a punch. You need to react and get guys' hands down. And you see shades of him being able to do that now with the next level. It's more like a Bernard Raymond, where that's kind of going to have to be a really common tool in your box because you're not always going to have the arm length to be the guy who gets first contact against a Myles Garrett or a Chop Robinson. Like, you got elite rushers in your division, and like Landon Jackson, who we also struggle with in college. But bottom line, I think that Will Campbell is a plus run blocker, which you don't have to get excited about that. But if you have a left tackle, exactly. Like, it's not a lot of teams have a good pass blocker and a guy who's just okay as a run blocker. If he's a force, that gives you two directions of the offensive line that defenses have to respect. And for years, it's just been Mike Nwenu. Whether he's a tackle or guard, you know the ball is either going that direction or it's going left to cut back right. Like, I'm telling you, I've studied, I kind of play it. It's like a game. Sometimes I'm like, when are they actually going to go left and mean it? And every once in a while they do, but it's very obvious. And now you get a guy who can do a lot, especially with that athleticism. So plus run blocker, I think a good pass protector, or like Vidarian Lowe last year. If he's going up against average guys, you're not going to hear his name. If it's an elite rusher, yeah, he's probably going to give up a hit or two, but ideally he's not going to, give up those body blows or anything like that. And I agree. Morgan Moses, worst case scenario, he's average. That's an upgrade. I would prefer an offensive line that wasn't Garrett Bradbury and Wes Schweitzer. Like, if one of those guys is starting, it's not the worst thing in the world. Center and left guard can be protected. But when you have two of those guys, it gets a little bit choppier, especially Will Campbell is still a rookie. So you want to give him some level of security. It's just been odd at left guard, though, man, because we've seen Tyrese Robinson. We've seen really everyone but Layden Robinson kind of in that mix, which has been really disappointing because I think he has the most upside of that group. But hey, what do you think of Cole Strange, actually? Because there are legitimate reasons to be concerned. It's not just the injuries. Like, there are some IQ problems in terms of picking up twists. There's the anchor where he literally got injured because he kind of got put on skates by Chris Jones. So there are concerns, but Will Campbell and Cole Strange, if they're maxed out, could be one of the most athletic left sides in the NFL.
Yeah, and they could also be, one of the most concerning when it comes to Cole Strange if it goes the other way, and not to rain on the parade. It's just when I look at the
typical
interior,
Boston sports radio.
Yeah. Hey, I just try to tell the truth, right? That's so when it comes to center, like Garrett Bradbury, I think to me, he's a stopgap for this season. And then if Jared Wilson can emerge, because Jared Wilson, to be honest, and I know this is going to sound like a nerdy offensive line thing, that's my favorite pick they made in this draft. This guy started one season at Georgia, was second team all SEC, ran a 4.8 40-yard dash. He's as athletic as you can be. He could be a guy long-term that could be a guard if there's problems there, given his athleticism. I would love him at center long-term because I think to have a center that athletic would be unique across the NFL. So I think Bradbury, to me, is, he's an okay player. I think it's worth asking why was Minnesota so eager to just be like, let him go. But I think he's a stopgap for the year. He'll be okay. Similar to Morgan Moses, maybe average to below average. And then at guard, like Onwenu, to me, right guard, probably top 15 right guard in the NFL. On a good day, probably a top 10 right guard in the NFL. But at left guard, I think if you can get, much like the receiver room with Polk and Baker, if Caden Wallace and Layden Robinson, you can get one good player out of the two of them, I'll take it.
Same with receiver.
Yeah. And I'll think I kind of lean towards Robinson being that guy. But then, like you said, Taylor, the opportunities haven't been there as much. So maybe not. And I look at that left, like City So's another guy that 2 years ago down the stretch in 2023, when a lot of things were falling apart, I thought he was improving and he was getting better down the stretch of 2023. And then last year he was a ghost. I mean, he had snaps at fullback instead of playing guard.
He was a starter all summer. That was the crazy part until like that last week when he got hurt, and then it never came back.
And given the state of their offensive line, I'm not sure why they wouldn't put him back in when he was healthy. It's not like he was a starter, he got hurt, and someone replaced him, and all of a sudden they had this great offensive line. Like, they didn't.
I think it was mental, honestly. Like, because I thought the same thing. It got to a point where we were asking Scott Peters, and he kept saying, like, oh, he hasn't seen a lot of football, da-da-da. And I started thinking, like, they must be running twists in practice, and he's not picking them up.
Which is weird, too, for a guy that started playing college in 2018 and played tackle, guard, and center in college. Like, he has seen a lot of football. Just saying. And then another guy like Jack Conley, I mean, he's 6'7", so he's kind of tall for a guard out of BC, but that's a guy that's going to be in that mix. So really, it's too bad in that, like, I look at left tackle and saying, like we said about Campbell, I think there's a lot to like there, some concerns, but he's the starter, and I think it'll be pretty good. Morgan Moses, will be average, maybe a slightly above average, slightly below average, but right around average. On when it will be good. Bradbury will be kind of average, but left guard, you have no idea. Like could it be Strange? Could it be Robinson? Could it be so? I don't know. I want to lean towards Layden Robinson, but even he hasn't shown me enough. So really, when I look at the offense as a whole, left guard is probably the position that gives me the most concern, right? I'm watching Drake May's development at quarterback the most, but what gives me the most concern is what are they going to do at left guard? And just think about it, guys. If you're the Raiders in week 1, you're the Panthers in week 4, what are we going to do? We're going to target the left guard and pressure Drake May right up the middle and blow up those power run schemes, right off the A and B get. Like that's what they're going to do. And that to me, that's one of the biggest things I'm watching overall, and it's my biggest concern on offense.
Well, that is the offense. That wraps up our offense. And for the interest of time, as well as, frankly, the interest in the offense versus what we think we know already about this defense, one that, yes, they took a dip last season under Gerard Mayo and sort of the fringe new regime, but brand new defense, brand new leadership, similar guys come over, but then they make a couple additions as well. Your Milton Williams, your Robert Spillane's. Let's look at the defense as a whole instead of going position by position. And John, I want to get your thoughts on I guess the coaching staff and the guys they've brought in both on the staff as well as those players, the Milton Williams, the Robert Spillane's, Marcus Epps, who 2 out of the 3 of those guys have a connection to the coaching staff, given who they played under, and Josh McDaniels. But just this defense too, where they kind of took a dip last year, but it looks like people expect them to kind of get back to where they were a couple years back. We're talking safeties with Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers back, hopefully healthy. So kind of just your expectations for this unit as a whole.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind, right? Like 2 years ago, they're a top 5 defense in the league, and last year they're a bottom 5 defense. It depends on what metric you measure by, but it's been a real kind of whiplash situation. And I look at this defense, like I think the Mike Pellegrino loss coaching corners is kind of a big one. That's one to keep in, especially when I think cornerback is your best group on the team. Like Christian Gonzalez is an all-pro level player. I think Carlton Davis is a fringe all-pro level type player. I think he's a really, really good player. Coming off an injury, but it's a broken jaw, and I'm not trying to minimize broken jaws, but it's not a hip injury that affects his fluidity. It's not an arm injury that affects his press or tackling. I think Alex Austin, there's a lot to like there as well. So I think, look, this defense has a lot of potential to be better. I think there are some fair questions, though. Like I mentioned Carlton Davis coming off the injury. It's kind of a new scheme and kind of not, because he was with Terrell Williams last year, but it's a Vrabel scheme. What about safety? Like I feel like Kyle Duggar, there was injuries, but he was really inconsistent last year. Jabril Peppers was inconsistent as well. He turns 30 in October. There's a lot to like with Craig Woodson, a guy who spent college snaps at free safety, in the box, at slot corner, can play everywhere. I think he's going to have a real role. And I wouldn't be surprised, guys, if we're sitting here, if you're kind enough to have me on in June of 2026, we're talking about a safety group that's Marte Mapu and Craig Woodson are the main guys. Because if Duggar and Peppers both have outs in their contract after this year, and I'm not wishing them away, but I think this is a position that you're going to see some intense competition, because I think Marpu got better as the year went on last year. I think Duggar and Peppers are good players, but they've kind of plateaued, and I think Woodson has a lot of potential there. So that's going to be intense. Linebacker, I'm a little concerned about because of the lack of depth, right? Tavai got injured. Obviously, in OTA, he's going to be out till at least training camp. Spillane, lot to like. Comes downhill, attacks, blocks, really good in the run game. I think, what's he, 6'1", 229, so he's not huge. He's athletic enough in the pass game. But beyond him, I'm kind of like, not a lot of answers there. It's like tight end. You have this one guy that you're like, okay, I think he's a good player. And then beyond that, there's not a lot. And defensive tackle. Christian Barmore was one of my favorite players on the team, but he barely played last year. Milton Williams was a terror to opposing offenses, but he played 50% of the snaps. How is he going to do when it's 65 or 70? So it's a long-winded answer, Mike. I think they're going to be a lot better than they were a year ago, but I think they don't be shocked if the first few weeks of the year they have some inconsistencies and struggle
process.
And then, especially because you look at week 1, it's Pete Carroll and Geno Smith who have worked together, plus Ashton Genty's debut. That's a good offense. I think you're going to see right away. You're going to see Buffalo in week 5 as well. So don't be surprised if there's a little bit of a feeling out process there. But I do think, to answer your question, they're going to be a lot better than they were a year ago.
I have a lot of confidence in this unit. Like the defensive line, Barmore and Milton Williams, obviously like health, I think is the biggest thing. And that's at a lot of different spots. And you can't predict for that, but I at least like the depth that they have at most spots. Like behind them, Joshua Farmer and Jeremiah Farms. In this system, I really like what they could do. Farmer has shown up in practices. The edge, I think, looks much better. Keon White seems like he's actually
I'm glad you brought up Keon White.
Yeah, like he's maybe going to be a full-time edge defender. And if he can be the type of threat that he was inside as he is outside, now I don't think he can because his athleticism is such a crazy mismatch, but you've already got to elite pass rusher. So maybe having him dedicated there allows him to start to grow and thrive. And you've got depth. You got Swinson, you got Landry, you got Chason. If it was just one of those guys, I might be worried, but that's a lot of depth. And I like Elijah Ponder, even if he ends up just kind of sneaking onto the practice squad. I like him as developmental depth. I actually feel differently about this depth at the spine because linebacker, I love Spillane. We've seen Jack Gibbons in this defense, and I think he looks very comfortable in it. I don't think he's a guy you can pick on. I think he'll be competitive, even if he's not like a great athlete. I just think he's smart enough that he's not really going to be in the wrong spot very often. Jelani Tavai dodged a bullet. I honestly I didn't know what to expect when he went down because it looked kind of serious. But training camp, it's fine. You know what you're getting. If Mike Vrabel likes him, I think he's a pretty good fit in the defense. The lack of pass rush does worry me. And Christian Ellis is clearly a guy they like, and I think someone who is kind of trending upwards. Now, cornerback does worry me a little bit. I think it's a lot of unproven guys. Safety, again, a lot of injury concerns, and Woodson, I think, ends up being a starter, honestly. I really like him, even if it's more in that like third safety role. Mapu, his tackling and his block shedding really worry me. And the fact that he has been so inconsistent doing anything but man coverage. There's the flashes where he makes these big plays and I get excited, but then it's just like if you have him near the line of scrimmage, he's a massive liability where like it's not like Gibbons where, you know, he'll win about as often as he loses. Like Mapu gets run over. So I do worry about the depth at corner. I am more confident, though, at what they've got at linebacker, at least because it's a lot of guys that have been in the league for a long time, and you already have the tape to see what they can do.
John, I like the point about it feels like it's going to be better than last year. I agree, but there's also a little bit more of like mystery at kind of each spot than you would like when you kind of dig into it. The health of Barmore, which we can only hope that it's better. Tavai going down is tough. The safeties solid, but getting a bit older. Like there are question marks that if everything goes well, there's a high ceiling. I just wonder what the floor of the unit ends up being. I do also wonder what the impact of Terrell Williams not being in person for a long time in this offseason program kind of
a lot of carryover in the coaching staff though.
Yeah, right. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out, but I think ultimately there should be more confidence, far more confidence than there was last year, for sure. So
yeah, I'm glad Taylor brought up Keon White too, because that's a player that you could tell last year, and there were some public comments when they weren't playing well. It bothered him, and I think that's a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought also too, his comments, like they weren't like Tavai's comments telling the fans to know their place, right? I didn't think Keon White's for that.
It was internal.
Yeah, but I look at Keon White. Can he be like, and Patriots fans will remember this guy, can he be like Justin Tuck was for the Giants? Like Justin Tuck was 6'5", 270-ish. Keon White's 6'5", 280, 285-ish. He moved inside at times, Tuck did. We saw Keon White do that at times at the end of last year. He was a really good edge rusher because I agree with Taylor. I think the edge position is in a really good spot. Anthony Jennings sets the edge in the run game at a really high level. I thought it was funny. I was going back through my notes. Last year they played the Cardinals, and I thought Jennings had a bad game on the edge against the run, and it surprised me because he's typically so good at it. Yeah. And Keon White as well, and you know Harold Landry's in that mix too. So I think at edge, ironically, despite all the money in Milton Williams and Barmore's all-pro talent, I think I'm most confident in edge with a combination of their depth and just kind of knowing what the guys there bring.
And John, before we get you out of here, I know we kind of rifled through defense here, but we also, and special teams wise, I think, look, Borregales is going to win the kicking job. Bryce Behringer is going to be your kicker, or your punter rather. Brendan Schooler is going to be your special teams ace. Like there's not a ton there, but you shared with us before the show that you actually spoke with Julian Ashby's coach, right? Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So what did you take from him? He's the rookie, for those who aren't familiar, the rookie long snapper who the Patriots drafted in the 7th round of the draft.
And one quick note on Borregales. I went, and
Yeah.
this was a fun exercise. I went back through old weather reports of his college games. He only kicked under 50 degrees once. Ironically, it was at BC in November of 2023. He was one of two
Wow.
that day. So I do want to see him kick in the cold weather, just saying.
Okay.
As far as Ashby goes, yeah, I had a conversation with a coach down at Vanderbilt about him, and the Patriots liked him so much. Mike Vrabel and Jeremy Springer went down there and had a private workout with him 2 weeks before the draft. They really liked him. Also, Cardona's contract situation played into that. But that was one of the reasons they targeted him. And I know, no one really cares about long snappers, but I think for the first time in maybe a while, when you look at the full complement of long snapper, punter, kicker, you can have confidence in all three. Like before, you could have confidence in Cardona and mostly Behringer, but you weren't really sure kicker. Now I think Behringer's kind of established. I think Borregales will be pretty good. And Ash, you can have confidence, I think, in all three across the board. I think that's a good thing.
I think Ashby also, we saw that Springer, for some reason, Belichick didn't want his long snappers to really be involved in the tackling, so they didn't do anything. Springer was like, no, we let our long snappers tackle. Joe Cardona, led the league. He
forced a fumble in week 1 against the Bengals.
A fumble and, led long snappers for 3 weeks or something, and then didn't have another tackle again. So, I guess maybe he also wasn't as much of a fit as an older guy, but Ashby is this freak athlete for the position. So also makes your punt unit a little more dangerous because you got Brendan Schooler. I know Marcellus Dial, they're kind of saying he's taken some improvement as well. And you got guys like Del Pettis who are also really reliable there. So significant improvement, I'd say. And then Borregales, I'm pretty excited about him because anybody that we've spoken to, all they say is that he's just a really cool, calm, collected guy. And that kickers are like golfers. It's really, a lot of it is a mental game. You're trying to do the same thing over and over again. And if you mess it up, do you care? Is it something that really eats at you? Or can you be like, all right, it's fine, I'll do it next time, and truly mean it? And he seems like that kind of cold cat. So I agree. I feel much more confident in the future of the special teams than I have since Jake Bailey signed his extension. And then before he fell off the face of the earth.
What was that, 2019 or 20? Yeah, I know. Yeah. And you know what, guys? Look, this is the third time this decade they've drafted a kicker. Please just don't do that anymore. Can you just be good enough that I don't have to draft another kicker or talk about it till 2036? Can you give me that? Just no more kickers for the next decade or so, please.
100%. I am with you. Well, John, this was super fun. We appreciate you taking the time. Again, this was our Patriots roster audit, looking at the entirety from top to bottom as the Patriots move out of OTAs into minicamp. John, before we let you go, like I said, thanks for joining us. Let our viewers know where they can find you and what you got coming up as far as Patriots coverage and also Boston sports coverage.
Find me on Twitter at @TheRealJonLyons, on Instagram, JonLyons78. Of course, you can hear me on WEEI on the weekends, sometimes at night as well. Sunday mornings with New England Football Journal, our Patriots Pulse show. Same with Patriots Postgame as well. And as an occasional and happy guest here on Pat's Daily with you two guys.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks so much, John. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. Myself and Taylor will be back tomorrow on Wednesday for a mailbag edition of the show. Taylor will push his mailbag tweet out tomorrow morning at some point, so we'll get all those answered for you as we continue on this lovely Patriots offseason. So again, make sure you keep it here, rate, review, and subscribe to Patriots Press Pass. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you soon. Peace out, everyone.